Good afternoon, everyone. I can see the room is starting to fill up, so we'll give it a few moments for all the participants to enter this Zoom call. Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. The webinar has started and we've started recording. I see a few more participants are still coming into the room, but we'll make a start anyway. We've got a lot of ground to cover this afternoon. So very good afternoon to everyone who's joined us, and welcome to this lunchtime Lunch and Learn webinar from the Supply Chain Sustainability School. This is one of a series of webinars that we'll be running throughout the year that covers broadly the topic of digital construction. And this afternoon's session is entitled Exploiting Lean and Digital Approaches to Drive Excellence in Project Delivery. And I'll be talking this afternoon from Mark Roberts from BBI Services, who I'll introduce more fully in a moment, but he's, first of all, great speaker, a great supporter and helper of me in my work in the school. He's a published author, which I'm sure he'll talk about in a moment, and he's got a wide cross-sector experience to bring to this afternoon's session. So a few housekeeping rules, if we may, to start. The audience microphones and cameras will be switched off. This will be very much Mark and me in conversation. However, we do invite you to contribute. So you will find the toolbar at the bottom of your screen a Q&A button, and we would welcome questions and answers throughout the session. We may, if my colleague Jenny flags up something particularly interesting to me, we may interrupt the session to address a particular question or comment, but certainly we'll make time at the end to hear from Mark, and he'll respond to your comments. So if I may, I'm going to start with a slide deck, which will make a few introductions. So let me just share my desktop too, and then start this deck. Mark, would you just shout out and confirm you can see that first slide, please?
Yeah, all good there.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, welcome to the session. Couple of introductions. My name is Dave Emery. I work for the Supply Chain Sustainability School. I suppose if I was to describe my role alliteratively, I help my colleagues to create, curate, and communicate some of the resources and materials we have. And my particular specialities are in offsite construction and digital construction. However, I'm far more excited to introduce Mark from BBI Services. Mark describes himself as a seasoned business optimization specialist. He's been doing this for over 25 years, and he's held senior and executive positions across a number of leading organizations and blue chip companies. Intriguingly, for somebody who talks about lean processes, he comes from a cross-sector background from automotive, steelmaking, technology, healthcare, and finally construction. He's got a master's degree in engineering and manufacturing management. He's just written his second book. Mark, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself a little bit further?
Yes, thanks there, Dave. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your time on this session. I hope it adds value to your thinking and your practices going forward. So yeah, just briefly on my background. So in essence, I head up the operations for BBI Services. And the way to kind of summarize what we do, we help teams engage and deliver exceptional levels of performance across their programs, across their projects, across their businesses. So that's it in a nutshell, deploying the appropriate solutions that are going to get them there, whether that be kind of lean or digital.
Thanks, Mark. We'll get you to talk a bit more in a moment. If I may, I'd just like to give a little bit of background to some of the resources and materials that have led ultimately to us delivering this webinar today. So the school was commissioned by CITB to develop some resources and learning materials around digital construction as part of a project called Downloading a Digital Mindset. And much of the material was based around some real world case studies from the Tideway East project, a huge infrastructure project. I think the contract value was around £4 billion, and involved Tideway, Costain, Vinci, Bakery, Solentach, and so on. And the resources that came from that project were an enhancement to our online resource library, several hundred new pieces of material I seem to remember creating and finding. We put a training needs assessment where we could look at an individual's knowledge gaps, as it were, in digital, and present them with a personalised learning plan of new materials. Created a digital maturity assessment which looks at an organisation's digital competency and maturity in comparison with its contemporaries. We developed some new e-learning modules, some digital video bites, which was great examples of digital innovation in construction. And finally, we developed a digital leadership course, about which I'll speak more at the end. So I just want to acknowledge the help and support given to us by the big companies on our leadership group, whose pictures you will see on the screen at the moment. And as I say, I'll come back to the digital leadership course in a moment. What I'd like to do now, though, is run Mark's slides. Mark, I'm in your hands when you want me to advance. Can I apologise if you're hearing a lot of noise in the background? I'm sitting in the far northeast corner of Scotland, and a storm has just broken out, the like of which I've not seen for a while. So apologies for any background noise. Mark, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I did think it was someone eating a big bag of crisps in the background, but okay, right.
I'm going to attempt to mute myself.
Okay, if you flick onto the next slide then, please, then, Dave. Right, so what we've got up here, so when we talk about lean, this is our definition of lean. And so when you kind of phrase lean in this way, so what we say here is it's all about delivering the explicit needs of our customers with the minimal amount of effort and frustration. So when you describe lean almost in that lens, it's like the argument to not do that is kind of just diminishes. So why wouldn't you want to deliver exactly what your customers want with a minimum amount of effort and frustration? Of course you would do. So that's what lean is all about there to do. And also when you think of that definition there and the utilization and the exploitation of digital solutions as well, you can also apply that with that thinking in mind. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And this slide here then is almost the so what factor. Okay, so that all sounds good, but so what does it actually mean for us and our programs and our business? And well, ultimately in doing that, we can boost efficiency, we can drive down costs, promote program certainty, unlock actually program certainty and assurance in the way that we work and across our jobs, and more importantly, really achieve sustainable levels of profitable growth. And that's what it's all about. It's by having that mindset with the customer and delivering exactly what they want in the right way, with a minimal amount of effort and frustration. In essence, what we're doing is driving profitable growth and customer loyalty. Okie dokie. On to the next slide. Okay, so all that sounds good and great, but what's getting in the way? What's stopping teams and individuals and projects and programs actually doing all that stuff? Because it sounds kind of, yeah, why wouldn't we do it? So the problem is when we actually get on the job and stuck in, we end up, all these problems are starting to batter us. And loads of things are kind of tripping up, and with all the complexities that we've got in the task at hand, we end up more often than not spending a lot of our time fighting fires and jumping from one problem to the next. And in most cases, people are actually entrenched and working in the problem, and they haven't got that time, that breathing space to actually stand back outside of the problem and seeing, look, actually, is there a better way of working? And so we've got to try and break through that challenge to enable our teams and everyone on the job and within our companies to spend more time, the bulk of our time, proactively looking at systematic, continuous improvement that we can kind of deploy and take advantage of. over to the next one. So, and in doing that, it requires a systems thinking approach. And just one example in terms of what do we mean by a systems thinking. So what we can't do is almost look to deploy a discrete tool or technique. We've got to look at a bigger picture. So I think most people probably on the call are perhaps familiar with a last planner type approach. And you can take a systems thinking when deploying a collaborative planning and control system across our programs. And what do I mean by that? So a systems thinking, we've lost the slides. A systems
Let me go back to that again, Mark.
Okay. Let's see if we can get them back up. There we go. All good. So in this lens here, when we're talking about a system thinking in terms of our collaborative planning approach, we start by catching a production schedule that's ambitious, bought in with a high level of confidence by all the people that are actually there to deliver that schedule. We then can kind of catch that with a robust 6 to 12 week look ahead that tease out all those make ready needs, ensure all the ducks are lined up to deliver that schedule, break that schedule down in sufficient weekly and daily detail that we can then hand over and drive into our daily activity reviews, ensuring that each day we're on point to deliver exactly what's expected. And then overall, we've got our heads up display, our control room at the bottom of that slide there, basically visualizing that we're on track, or if we're not on track, these are the things that are stopping us. And fundamentally, these are the things that we're doing to mitigate those things. And we've got the assurance that bad news early is better than bad news late, and we're able to duck those punches before they kind of land and do any damage. That's the kind of thinking. And you can imagine almost if you didn't have a systems thinking approach there, you would lack a golden thread all the way through, taking that master schedule into daily activity. And if you deployed, for example, a DABS in isolation just on its own, then it would have no reference to the program and you wouldn't be driving anything. Similarly, if you've got a 12-week look ahead or even just a master schedule and you haven't got the other elements below it, you're not going to drive any betterment either. So you need all of those cogs, all of those elements with those principles in mind on how to kind of beat, catch, and drive that program with sufficient rigor and detail for it to actually happen and make it work. Okay.
You use the jargon DABS, Mark. Is that the daily activity briefing?
Oh yeah, sorry. So yeah, a DABS it stands for daily activity briefing. Some people call them DSUMs as well. If you ever hear that, that's a daily stand-up meeting. Yeah. So, but the idea is, we always say the frequency of review drives the pace of change. So if you are driving something monthly or weekly and something slips, it's going to be next week before you can get better action on it and try and resolve it. And it's just going to drag and drag, where if you're on it every day driving that program, you can make changes, and anything that slips today, you can be back on track tomorrow. In some cases, we put in short interval control. So each hour we're on it on a critical path. But that's the thinking. It's a system overall. Now linking that so that's a lean way of working, really, in terms of how we actually deliver our programs and the system thinking behind it. And it's almost, well, so where does the kind of digital aspects kind of fall into play? Now, what I would say, regardless of whether it's a digital system or a digital platform or a traditional sticky notes on the wall and dry white board, both systems are highly effective, highly impactful, providing you utilize that system thinking and you've got a common set of principles in how they knit and fit and how we work it. So it's the principles that are important, not necessarily the platform. So that's the first piece. And so both can be effective. The second piece then, so where the digital really does start to kind of take over and come to the forefront and add value, obviously we can take out a lot of duplications in the way that we work and to give us more time doing other things. And as an example there, and this was out of a data center working with the boys in Cluny, as an example, they'd already kind of embedded quite a robust and rigorous last planner system using kind of sticky notes and the dry whiteboards, and they're really effective. So it's important to note that it had a good baseline behavior and kind of mindset in place. And when they switched over to a digital solution, basically what we found was, whereas traditionally they were capturing kind of on average 55 activities in a week on those kind of sticky notes, as soon as we switched to a digital solution, all of a sudden we were able to efficiently track and capture more than 300 activities during the week. So a lot more rigor in our planning with those subcontractors capturing the activity. And that was purely because it was a lot easier to do. You could capture all that offline in these digital systems. And also what the digital systems enabled was the actual meetings that wrapped around our collaborative planning really became a lot more value adding. So there weren't post-it note pushing sessions. There was no one actually writing post-it notes in the sessions, which typically when you're pulling people together once a week is what they tend to be. Or the dialogue is all about, like, how do we kind of beat the program? What are the issues? Is that activity kind of lined up? Is there any clashes? Or the dialogue is all on the value added aspects. It's not writing post-its, and the digital systems enable that. Okay.
Question in the Q&A, Mark. What digital solution were you using, I think was the question.
Okay, right, yeah, so that's a good question. Now there's what I would say, each project has different nuances, and there's lots of digital platforms out there. Some have got different bells and whistles than others, and depending on what you need from your project and on what's appropriate will depend on the choice of system. The particular system that we used in this case was a system called VisiLean. There's other systems, Datascope, BIM 360 Plan, and Touch Plan. There's a whole raft of them. And as I said, some are easier to use than others. Some have different functionality than others. So it's definitely not a one size fits all. And what I would say is, coming back to those principles and that thinking in terms of the system, the principles are the most important, and how we use the platforms. It's not necessarily the platform that's the first consideration.
You'll be giving us some case studies, I think, won't you, later, Mark?
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. Let me just see if I can click forward.
Yeah, just one last point on that as well. The key thing is that, and with all these technology examples and lean tools and techniques, it's not the tool or technique that's important, or the platform. It's how we use it and how the people wrap around it. Okie dokie. So that's almost looking at a lean sort of collaborative planning way of working, and how digital can kind of take that a stage further. The other avenue where we've utilized kind of technology that's kind of caught kind of lean ways of working is almost like when you look at the detailed practices, what do we actually do, all the tasks involved, and how we work in order to get the job done. So everything from like RAMs to snag reporting, visual inspections, walk down handovers, all these systems and procedures that we've got. Well, what's the current best way of actually carrying out those systems and procedures? And if you consider how we work currently, 9 times out of 10, there'll be multiple different kind of platforms. A lot of it may be paper-based. We're probably using lots of Excel sheets and the like. And if you take a RAMS document, for example, well, what's written in that document, well, how much value does it actually bring? And then once we've got people to kind of sign off and say they've read it, how accessible are those instructions at the point of use when they're needed? Let alone the information in it. Are we really confident that that genuinely captures the current best way of working, and then takes that to be common practice? So that's almost the challenge. There's a raft of things there. That how do we kind of get all that stuff and put it to the hands of the people, right at the source of where the activity is being done and carried out in the most efficient, effective manner? So there's really nice digital solutions that can help streamline that for us and make that simple.
Another question from the audience, Mark. Are the systems and procedures tied into the lean process just described.
So that the way to think of that lean process as well. So that's another good question. So that process previously described, that last planner approach, or think of it really as an improvement system, because on the back of that, we should be able to see at a glance, are things on track, not on track? What are those issues and what are we doing about it? So it's going to surface, promote and feed and guide improvement activity. So where it exposes an opportunity, and it could say, well, actually, the biggest reason why we're delaying here on this package or on this project is quality, and it's the amount of snags that we've got. Well, then the next level is almost, well, what are we doing about snags, and how are we eliminating, not just managing snags, and how can we get people working almost snag free? So what is the best method to actually promote quality at the source, and how do we take that, and if we're doing like a resi job, for example, into the apartments where people, all these workers are actually carrying out the work. So it will feed and guide where to focus, so the answer is yes, if we treat it as a system. It can guide the opportunities. Because the other thing as well, and it was a good question there previously, is without using that system, that collaborative lean management system, in essence, we could be almost looking to digitize, automate and focus on everything and every job instruction and everything that we've got, whereas we haven't got that luxury of time, and we need to focus on the key things that are going to give us the biggest bang for the buck to de-risk our jobs and make things easier. Okie dokie.
Shall I move on?
Yep, please. So imagine all those documents now, all those practices and ways of working. So in essence, our challenge, and if you look at the top right here, what we're trying to do is get current best practice. And in essence, what we want to do is make that common practice. And so when we turn our backs and walk away, that's just the default way of working. But and we've got that assurance that, yeah, the current best way is the common way. So and that is really hard to do, particularly with on construction sites where people are spread out in all kinds of locations. It's not as easy as a factory where you can put laminated documents in eyes view of people working on different stations. We're here, there and everywhere, aren't we, on these sites? And so in order to do that, we've got to really look to embrace digital ways of working and the technology that's on hand. If you just want to click the next button, I think that slide builds up there, Dave.
Yep.
Right, yeah. So the goal really is to ensure that all our ways of working, how we carry out our tasks and our operations, and how we build our jobs, safety is a given, but so we need to ensure that it's not only is it safe, but it's optimized, it's repeatable, it's reliable, it's capable, it's scalable, and it's controlled. So we want all of that out the way that we do things. And if we can ensure that all our processes tick all those boxes, happy days, we've got certainty across our programs. It all sounds good, but how do we do that in practice? And it's an absolute job's worth trying to do that if we haven't got the right technology around us. And there's a lot of platforms that can help us achieve that. One that we work with, and I'm not selling all these platforms, by the way, but one that's particularly good at this is Augmented. It's an American company. There's lots of others as well that we can go into. And some have, just as the last planner type digital solutions, some have different bells and whistles and functionality than others. But that's just one example. And so the power of these tools, it makes it easy. The first thing is how do we capture the goodness? How do we bottle the goodness, that current best way? So we don't want it to be a job's worth of capturing that process. So traditionally, we would have to write out a RAMS document. It can be very wordy, and then maybe taking some pictures and everything else. It can take an age just capturing it all. And with platforms like Augmented, and there's lots of others, you can utilize video, and we can streamline the actual capture of that practices or process. So that's the first instance, because the easier it is to capture, the more assurance and the more likelihood that it will be relevant and updated repeatedly. So as soon as a new idea comes into play, we can update the process to ensure that it always remains that current best way, the current being key. Okie dokie. The other thing that these systems actually enable, if you flick onto the next slide, there's an actual screen on it. So particularly with Augmenta as an example. So if you imagine I'm following a procedure now, it could be a RAMS document, standard operating procedure, and some of these systems have augmented reality, like a lens piece, so you can see, you've got all your hands free and you can see in the corner of your eye and follow the instructions. And some of them enable you to actually follow a workflow. So as soon as you've progressed from one task and one stage, you positively confirm and you're on to the next stage, and it comes up with the little hints, tips, those little tricks that keep the job safe, but also keep it efficient, effective, and help reduce the likelihood of making mistakes. It's almost building quality into the way that we work in. And as we're going through, some of these systems can almost, you can get to a point, and if you're struggling to, hey, no, I've got an issue here, that's not quite right, it's not fitting here, and that there's a problem. So in the real world, or traditionally, if that's the case, that one, and it could be a minor little issue, but there's a question mark on it. Without technology like this, what can happen is sometimes that will, the operative or the person involved may just say, well, do what they think's best and move on, and that snag or that issue be found much later in the day and have a domino wave of effect. Alternatively, if they're really kind of, yeah, I'm unsure, I'm not moving forward until I do that, you can incur a delay. And even if it's a small delay where they've got to then find someone, an expert on site, they've now got to walk away from the job and hunt down someone to get some advice on how to do that. Add all those little instances up, and they can delay the job quite considerably. And sometimes they won't come back to the following day, or even forget about it. So you've got all those kind of issues. And where these systems kind of come to light, you can, as you're going through your process, you hit a problem, you can call a friend straight away, taps you into the subject matter expert, and they could even be on another project, another site, but they're the expert at fitting that valve on that unit. And they can give you the little hints and tips there and then. And the other ability that these systems give is that person, that expert, because you're following a workflow, they can see straight away where you are on that workflow, so that you haven't got to relay a lot of information. So they can be really, really powerful, and save a lot of delays and enhance communication. And also with our skills deficit that we've got across the sector, that they can be a really robust solution to combating that problem and getting better consistency in the way that we work. And the more that we use videos and that type of technology, the easier it is for people that speak multiple languages to follow what's expected. And trying to do that traditionally with these paper-driven systems, and try and ensure that, because what we do at the minute on most projects that I've seen, we talk through a RAMS sheet, get people to sign off the RAMS sheet, and then that RAMS then disappears or is archived, and these guys are on the job and they're trying to use muscle memory on what they've signed off on, if you're lucky. So we want that consistently rather, in the back of people's minds and at the forefront of the way that they work. Okie dokie. On to the next little screen, because there's another little point on these. So again, just the other ability that technology can kind of have, and this platform brings it forward as well. So you can imagine all this data coming into us, and I think that on a lot of sites we can be big data junkies. We sometimes want to measure everything and aggregate everything, and if we're not careful, it's an absolute job's worth that we're creating. And sometimes we can have lots of data but no information. We're actually not doing anything. It's not guiding any issues. No one's even, because of all the issues that we've got no time to actually analyze, step back, look at the data and see exactly what exactly it's saying. So the power behind a lot of these systems as well is they use AI, and they use AI in a way where it can help analyze the data for us, guide these common areas where we're getting common themes of delay. People are continually getting stalled at this point in the process, and it can help guide where to focus your improvement efforts, and also learn by the decision making from these helpers and these kind of phone the friend kind of interventions to say, well, consistently when people hit this issue, this is the resolution that's now taken. So that the first instance, the AI can then start to advise the operative, when you hit this issue, 9 times out of 10, sort of try this first, because based on historic evidence, this resolution actually works. And then it also can then feed and put in suggestions on what to look at and what to lock in on the next revision of that current best way, to really help grow, promote, and strengthen our practices all the time, continually learning from all the interventions, the delays and everything, and help ease our burden so that we're not pulling together, aggregating all this information. We can just take the action on the right issues that the AI is highlighting for us. So again, technology, so all this is kind of lean ways of working in terms of standardizing current best ways and trying to get that out there. But using technology, we can greatly kind of boost our ability to kind of do that, deliver it, and make it more impactful on us, not make it a job's worth working in a lean way, which sometimes is often a barrier. We want to make it easy for people to actually embrace these ways of working and generally free up more time so that they can add value and deliver quality to our customers with exactly what I said earlier, the minimal amount of effort and frustration.
This is really interesting, Mark. Had it not been for the outbreak of the storm at the very start of this session, I was going to, as you recall, talk about some of the problems with data and take a rather dim view. So I read some remarkable statistics that says, for example, we'll probably produce more digital data in the next 3 years than we've created in the next 30. But even with all that digital data, very often it's incomplete, or it's not clear, or it's defective in some way. And for that reason, something like 75% of business executives don't actually trust the data that they've got, even if they can make sense of it. And what's really struck me about what you're talking about today is the fact that artificial intelligence can begin to validate and collate and correct and draw conclusions from that data, which is a huge step change as I see it.
It absolutely is. And people have been talking about AI for kind of years now. And I've always, when I've heard people describe AI and everything, to be honest, I've thought, it's a bit of a pipe dream, to be honest. But I'm amazed how fast the technology is really catching up, and these systems, what they can actually do. And there's even, so you mentioned me kind of writing a book, and just quickly as an example, there's AI systems out there. You can type in a paragraph of a book that you kind of want to write and put it, actually, I want to write that in the theme of Joe Rogan, and the AI will start to write your first page for you in a theme of Joe Rogan without any kind of plagiarism or copyright. It would just trawl the internet for all the knowledge and everything in seconds and start writing books for you. Not that's what I did, but there's systems out there that can really do that. It's really interesting, the power of AI, but also quite scary on some levels as well. But no, really encouraging technology that we can truly exploit and ease the way that we work. Okie dokie. Yes, so this is a key point. So ultimately, whether it's kind of lean tools and techniques or those kind of digital platforms, so that digital platform, that Augmented solution as an example, that's a tool set. Without those other cornerstones, the skill set and the mindset, it's not going to do anything for us. So first off, we need the skill set then to utilize that tool set in the right way. And then the mindset that underpins it. So I was talking a lot about that current best way. So what that tool there won't do, it won't define and identify that current best way. we need our people to come to the party. We need to facilitate that out with the free thinking and the right principles in mind. So what is the current best way? What does that look like? Well, Joe's got a way here, Harry's got a way there, and Jane's got a way there. Who's got the current best way? There may be elements and goodness and little golden nuggets in each of those three, the way that those three people work. But when we pull it together, we can then start to really articulate, well, that's the current best way. We'll do that little bit that Joe does there, etc., and amalgamate that. And that needs to be facilitated and captured and then signed off, tested, trialed. Yeah, that's rocking, that's safe, that's going to deliver the goods and deliver the results and the outcomes we want. Then we kind of need to bottle that in systems such as Augmented or others, and then drive that forward. But also with that mindset that kind of that's the current best way. That's not written in stone, and we need to kind of improve on it. So it's current best way today, but not tomorrow, and continually push the boundaries on that with that right mindset. And
I'm assuming as well, Mark, in this sort of process, you must give the opportunity to all sorts of people to have their opinion, those at the coalface as well as those who are driving the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And fundamentally, when we're talking about processes on the ground, the operational ways of doing things, the people that are with the tools in the hand actually doing the job, and they're the ones that are going to be following the processes. So we need to kind of involve those. It's not about a specialist in the corner writing what they think should happen. It's about the reality of what can happen and will happen and what's possible, using the hidden knowledge that many people keep to themselves. Okie dokie. So here's a case study from the team over in Cluny. So this was actually on a data center, and I think this was at the time maybe the third or fourth data center off memory. And the interesting thing with the team at Cluny, so talking about those three cornerstones, they very much driven from the project director, were all in that mindset. They wanted to continually not just meet the program, but always beat it. And they wanted to make sure that the next data center was better than the previous one. And always had that ethos that you're only as good as your last project, but continually hunger to this continual hunger and relentless pursuit to be the best. So that was the first point that they'd got, and that came, and that didn't happen overnight. The team kind of came together, and as I said, this was their third or fourth data center. So these data centers,
they'd got some benchmarks then, something they could measure against, I guess, Mark.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So and there was a lot of legwork done in the early days to set up things like last planner systems and get the guys working in a collaborative way and everything. It didn't all kind of happen overnight to get them to that stage and in that mindset. Yeah, they're quite, at this point in time, they were very much a tight team and well established. And so were all the contractors. So there was about 60 contractors in total working across these data centers. And by that data center that we were supporting, they were all, it sounds cheesy, but they were all in the groove to improve. Absolutely. And to put it in perspective, so this data center here, 95 hectares, so that's about 3 times the size of Trafford Park football stadium. And so big old beasts. And so the initial kind of situation, so they were traditionally stick building the bulk of this job. Yeah, there wasn't any kind of or very few kind of modular solutions, and they wanted to really kind of move things forward, see how they can really compress these kind of lean time scales and lead times. And so they started to challenge everything on them and say, right, so now we want a business case of why we need to continually stick build in each element of this data center. And that provided opportunities or surfaced opportunities for more modular ways of working. So coming back to this systems thinking, what these guys and girls did is they developed, just as one example, a modular fit out solution, how to fit out a cold aisle as an example in these data halls. And so they looked at the process and streamlined the process with an off-site facility, and started to get that rocking. But then how did they actually kind of assure that those modules were delivered right first time at the point, and the day and the time when they were actually kind of needed? They started to wrap around a technology system to give them that confidence. So if you flick onto the next slide. So again, using lean, lean thinking and lean ways of working, they designed this process, this way of working, this modular setup, and using modern methods of construction to get this flow line in place, but then to manage the flow line and ensure that everything was arriving in the right time. They used a digital last planner process. In this case, it was VisiLean, so that they were able to track these modules going through, had real-time process confirmation on when these modules were complete. As soon as one module was completed and one trade acknowledged that was done, it automatically triggered the incoming trade with a notification to pick that up and take that forward. So there was a seamless kind of baton change, as it were, going through, and this inbuilt process confirmation to ensure that the 3 rules of quality were embedded in the way that they work. And for those of you that don't know the 3 rules of quality, very simple. Don't accept a defect, don't make a defect, and whatever you frigging do, don't pass one on. Dead simple. So when you think of those 3 elements, what do we do? What are our measures of incoming quality? What are our measures of what we make? And what are our measures of outgoing quality? And how do we ensure that nothing gets passed on, whether it's to the next trade, or the worst case scenario is anything getting found by the client? And I've been on jobs, and I'm sure that there's people on the call that have been on jobs where I've seen the bulk of snags and issues and problems and quality issues actually found by the client, and very few by the people that are actually doing, or surfaced by the people that are actually doing the job. So what this does is turn that right on its head, and better still, eliminate pushing on poor quality, so we can fix it all at the source and ensure that and make sure everything's delivered snag-free on time. And without the aid of these digital solutions, that would have been nigh on impossible, or an absolute job's worth for someone chasing around and reporting, and you can imagine. But it was seamless with the technology. Were you going to say something, Dave?
There are. Yeah, sorry, I was going to just add in. There are some remarkable YouTube videos about the construction industry, which are kind of covered under the general heading, "Not my job, not my problem." And it's this sort of mindset where you let the problem go because it's not yours to identify or fix.
Yeah.
The other extreme of that, I remember, and people on the call may have heard me describe this before. I heard the production director of Toyota GB once talk about the fact that they're producing 2,900 vehicles per day in Derby, and anyone in that factory, if they spot a defect, is authorised to hit the big red button and stop the line. They would rather stop the line than pass that defect down and repeat it. And I think that's a cultural stance in that industry, which I'm not sure we quite yet got in the construction industry, but perhaps that debate is for another day. In fact, she'll tell us things are changing.
Yeah, so they have some. So on that point, yeah, in your sit. So we take people to master classes at Toyota. We take them to the engine plant at D side, and to help them see exactly those principles. Because all these, and if you take those principles in mind, forget the nuances. Yeah, we're not a car track. We haven't got a flow line like that. But the principles always kind of resonate and are replicable. And you'll see exactly that. You'll see operatives kind of stop the line when they've got an issue, and then how they're supported. And the other thing that's interesting, going back to this mindset, which is so important, the other thing that you'll see at the Toyota, I don't normally like to mention the T word too much in Toyota, because some people say, hey, we're not a car factory. But the one thing that they do, back to the mindset, when anyone's kind of waiting and they're being stopped and there's a delay, all the workers are trained to stand with the hands behind the back like that. So you'll see a lot of people, when there's a problem, stand with their hands behind the back. And what they're doing, because there's nothing that they can do, it's out of their control. If they've got a big mechanical issue or something that's stopping their production, or there's a complex quality problem, they stand with their hands behind the back to highlight the problem and expose it, rather than, oh, yeah, we've got a problem. Well, just look busy. And then you're hiding the problem. And also, just lastly on that point, but where people are waiting for stuff, waiting for materials, waiting for stuff, and they're not being productive, the Japanese, the mindset of the Japanese is whenever there's people are waiting, basically what you're doing as an employer, you're being hugely disrespectful to that person, because the most precious thing that anyone can give any company and any person is their time, because you don't get it back. And so if you're not utilizing and respecting that time in the right way, and these people are continually waiting for stuff and not being put to work, then you're disrespecting that person. As opposed to sometimes you can be, I've been in companies before, and the people are kind of don't look productive, and senior leadership are going, lazy buggers, get back to work, and they don't appreciate why. But yeah, it goes back to that mindset, how important that mindset is. So we need to gel those three, that mindset, skill set, with the appropriate tool set to really make it rock. And with our lean ways of working, bolstered by the technology now that we've got available, I mean, it is really happy days, providing we deploy it in the right way. Okay, the other one.
Thanks, Mark. I was going to say, just as an aside, for a future webinar, we're currently working with a researcher from Cambridge University. We're hoping to put a webinar on shortly. And her research has been around the human aspects of digital innovation. So what is it in our psyche, in our culture, in our mindset that prevents us adopting digital solutions? So I think that will complement this piece very well indeed.
Absolutely.
I've deflected you, Mark. I'm sorry about that. Please.
Right. There's a fundamental key slide coming up, I think, which should be the next one. Oh, well, this wasn't the one I was thinking about, but this just kind of puts it in perspective. Back to that so what factor. This was the impact that on the back of this case study, the guys in Cluny actually achieved by not just addressing the process, but wrapping a digital lean management system around it. They got 75% reduction working at height. So that was with the modular ways of working and developing these kind of tented facilities. 60% reduction in defects, 43% improvement in program efficiency, 45% reduction in labor spend. So there was a whacking great prize there for them, and lots of additional benefits, reducing all the transport congestion on site. They had real-time transparency of exactly what was happening, where it was happening, the issues that were bubbling up, to then drive improvement on the back of it. So it was.
Although you didn't see this as a key slide, I actually do. I believe we're in an industry that's resisted change for a very long time, and if we are going to improve our industry, we need to demonstrate real achievements through innovation. And the fact that you can articulate and quantify these savings is really compelling, I think, for the audience.
The other thing I'd say, so this was, I think now that they've built another 2 data centers since those days, and they've moved it a lot further forward since then. Right, this was the slide that I was going to touch on, really. So first, so this is so key to kind of put into perspective, really. So when we're looking at digital ways of working, some people start with that box on that sort of, if you look around the periphery, that box on the top sort of left-hand side, that automate, and they start there. So when they've got a problem or an opportunity, well, what digital solutions can we kind of hook onto? Where's that golden bullet? And someone said there's a digital last planner, so let's go and deploy. Let's hunt down that digital system, and let's just get that in place. Import the program, and then 2 weeks later, a month later, they think, well, that didn't work. And so the starting point is to say, well, first off, how are we working? What can be eliminated? What can be, is there opportunity to combine anything? Can we rearrange? Can we simplify? If we go through those elements first, and we've simplified what we've done, then it becomes a lot easier to standardize what we do. Yeah, and then from there we can then see where's the opportunity to then get the further gains and look to automate. The other thing is, once we go around in that order, well, if we don't go around in that order, if we start with automate, our business case to automate things first off becomes that there's always a business case, because we haven't considered the other stuff. So every kind of technology potentially gives a payback. Whereas if we're a bit smarter in the way we work, there's some low cost, no cost stuff that we can do quite easily, take out a lot of waste. And by the time that we get to automate, sometimes the same solution that we now have a look at that we considered before that perhaps did pay back, we've actually taken a lot of the opportunity out. And now that where we are, we've raised the game, the payback and the justification for automation and the benefit that it now gives, in some cases can be really marginal, and actually wouldn't give the payback. So it's really wise to go through that circle, really, or that cycle first off. The other thing as well, if you can imagine, if we start automate, potentially what we're doing is automating a load of rubbish, a lot of things that we could have eliminated in the first instance. So be really wary of that. The other key thing, so anything that we deploy in terms of digital solutions has got to tick those 4 boxes in the center of that circle there. It's got to be simple, intuitive, engaging, and effective. If it isn't those 4 things, if in doubt, cross it out. Because what's going to happen, and I guarantee it, people will get bogged down trying to get and understand that technology and get that to work. They'll take an age with it. And all of a sudden that will be the focus, trying to get and understand the technology, and then they'll lose sight of what that technology was there to actually do and deliver for them. And it will all be just about trying to get that technology to work and resolve the nuances around it and make it user friendly, and it just becomes a nonsense and detracts people. So and this goes back to the choice of those kind of platforms. There's a lot of platforms out there. There's a lot that can't tick any of those boxes. So there's a lot that do. But yeah, so that was my most important slide, really.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think you're absolutely right, aren't you? You can't simply automate a poor system and expect it to become a good system. It doesn't work like that. And so it's this back to basics approach, isn't it? Is the most important.
Yeah.
So thank you for running through that. Just a reminder to the audience, if you've got any questions for Mark, please pop them in the Q&A. I'm also going to ask my colleague Jenny now to pop a link into the chat and ask you if you would please spare a minute just to give feedback about this event. We're funded by partners in the industry, and we like to demonstrate to those partners that the materials we deliver are relevant and of the appropriate standard. And if they're not, we need to know. So really appreciate you taking a moment at the end of the session, or now if you wish, to fill in a feedback form. As you leave the session, in fact, the form will pop up, but I'm sure Jenny will pop it into the chat between now and then. If I may, I'd just like to spend a moment before I formally thank Mark. I'm just going to show you an opportunity to take part in furthering your digital knowledge through the school's digital leadership course. And I'm trying to talk and find the appropriate PowerPoint slide at the same time. So if I can multitask and do that, I will. So that is this one. And I'd like to go from here. So Mark, if you again shout, are you seeing something about our digital leadership student journey?
Sure can.
Okay, thanks. So audience, if you're familiar with the way the school operates, you know that we've got a vast repository of resources that you can access by creating a free account. And one of the techniques we use is very often to offer you a training needs assessment where you can answer several questions about a particular topic, and the algorithms on the website will present you with a personalized learning plan. What I want to show you now, though, is something rather different, which is Not for everybody who's interested in digital, but it's perhaps for those people in your organization who may be tasked with improving or invoking digital improvement. That might be the leader of a team of 3, it might be the CEO, it might be a departmental head. But we're taking a different approach to helping with learning here by taking you on a journey over several weeks. And that comprises a number of different learning methods. So our digital leadership course begins with an introductory module, a 3-hour workshop, usually with me, where we'll explore what might be the characteristics of a digital leader. And during that session, we'll get you to assess your individual digital skills and get you to assess your organization's digital maturity as well. Well, then at the end of that, which is a fixed date in the diary that we agree with you, we'll send you off on some weeks of your own personalized learning. You'll complete some e-learning resources. You'll complete some additional learning on the basis of what you told us about your digital skills. And then you'll head in red for the second workshop. This is a Harvard business style workshop. It explores some real world case studies from the Tideway project. And in order to participate in that, which is the red box, you need to spend half a day or so pre-reading those case studies. After you've been through that workshop, we get you to reassess your individual and organization skills. And we hope after a period of some 8 weeks or so that we can then award you a digital leaders badge. Now, currently we've had, I think, 5 cohorts of approximately 15 people of each have gone through this process. We're looking ideally for organizations that can send us up to 15 people in a cohort. If you can't manage that many people, we can perhaps mix you with another smaller group. But it requires some home study and some attendance at 2 virtual workshops. We've had these are some of the topics you'll discover: the characteristics of a digital leader, how to make the business case for digital spending, some of the great examples of digital in use, cybersecurity, etc., etc. And naturally modest as I normally am, I could never resist putting up some of the feedback comments we've had from cohorts have gone through that. At the moment, the way the funding works is we're able to offer it free of charge for the remainder of the year. So have a look at our digital page on the Supply Chain School website. And if you're interested in taking part in the digital leadership course, just contact me, David, at supplychainschool.co.uk. So I hope members of the audience, you found that useful. I certainly found it fascinating. Just a final urge, plea, please, to fill in the feedback form. Meanwhile, I'd like to offer a huge thanks to Mark Roberts of BBI Services. I'd like him to plug his book again, which is called, Mark?
Oh, it's called The Zombie Antidote. It's all about how to kind of invigorate and engage your working dead. There you go.
I downloaded it from Amazon. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I think it's been a great session, Mark. Really grateful to you. Thank you to the audience for attending. You'll be able to see the recording of this session on our website very soon. And final thanks to Jenny, my colleague and wingman in the background. For now, the session's closed. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.